Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "Real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care, it's about the safest investment in the world." And real estate is what we do. This is the Realtors Radio Network. There's no sense in overcomplicating real estate. And if you're a first-time home buyer, an investor, or a real estate agent, you're about to get useful, practical, and smart advice on every facet of real estate. Welcome to the Realtors Radio Network. Now your hosts, Santos Garcia, Marcos Suarez, and Dawn McCullough.
Welcome to Realtors Radio Network. Today we have our usual guests, Dawn McCullough, Santos Garcia, and myself, Marcos Suarez. But we have a special guest. Mr. Chris Rosa is one of our favorite title company reps. Actually, I'll let you introduce yourself because I don't know your official title with Elite, but I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks, Marcos, Dawn, and Santos for having me here today. I appreciate that. Yeah, my official title, Senior Account Executive. It sounds fancy.
That's awesome.
In layman's terms, I'm a sales rep. That's really what it is.
Okay.
Just been doing it
but you're our favorite one.
I appreciate that.
and the only one that's ever been on the podcast, or most likely will ever be on the podcast. So
maybe I was the only one to return the phone call, right?
No.
I didn't know there was more than one title rep.
You're the only one that we'll ever ask.
Well, I appreciate that. No, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Listen, we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot of questions, but I want to get some background, right? You're with Elite, but you haven't been with Elite, forever. You've been at other companies. How long? Not that you have to tell us which other companies, but
I'm an open book, Marcos.
How long have you been in the business?
So since 1997, 98.
Wow.
So started out there, and I was just telling a couple people starting out in the business, you were thrown out there. Uh-huh. There's a lot more training nowadays when it comes to title and other insurances. But I remember, I told this story the other day, I remember being in the Rockaway Diner, not knowing where to go or who to see, and just kind of thrown out there, ready to take on, the insurance world. And sitting at the front table there at the bar area, and not knowing where to go, and then ending up driving back home. After the episode of Jerry Springer on the TV. Right. But that's how it was back then. You were kind of like, hey, just go out and meet people.
Figure it out.
What do I do?
Yeah, figure it out, right?
Yeah, right.
Huh. But that trial by fire kind of a thing is a big it's something that's missing these days because now everybody wants the instant gratification, right? No, I'm in the business. Why aren't I making $100,000 already? Why aren't I? Everybody wants to go from 0 to 1,000. In 2 days. Yeah.
And even at my age, Marcos, you start to become that as well. Like you want the instant gratification too, because you're so wrapped up in it with everything else. So you find yourself losing patience and you want to, but just slow and steady sometimes is the best way to go.
That is the best way.
Dot your I's and cross your T's, right?
It's funny, even at the height of all of our powers, as far as, selling in real estate, when I was actively selling, at the height of my powers, height of my selling days, I would always tell people, they would ask me, how's business? Market's going crazy? It's steady. That's how the market is. It's steady. I would never say it's going crazy or I'm too slow. The market is always steady. If you're doing the right thing, slow and steady wins the race every time. It's like that tortoise, the rabbit and the tortoise story. Bugs Bunny was always running that race. He would always lose to the tortoise. It was just taking it easy, getting, at their pace.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's funny. But 1996, before you were born, he's been selling.
Right. That's right. I didn't want to give up my age. But.
So, bounce around to a few different title companies. Sometimes places change, things, evolve, and there's other opportunities. And I'm back at Elite Title Group, which I was there previously. Yeah. As you know, everything changed from the HUDs to the CDs, which was a big change.
Right.
And it took time for title companies to take on that new responsibility because when there was a HUDs, as everybody here knows, the attorneys were handling all the escrow and all the funds.
Right.
Then in 2014, 2015, that was all handed back to the title companies. Yeah. So it's almost like they're the extension of the paralegal service.
Right. So and it is a big adjustment to make when you've been doing X way for so long. and then to have that adjustment period of, and that's true for everyone. Even real estate, is adjusting, as it were. There were kind of a million things happening out there in other states, and we're all having to wait and figure out, okay, do we train this way? Do we train that way? Do we train for every scenario that might come up the road? Like, what do we prepare for? And title is no different, right? You have to adjust, with the times.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is buyers nowadays, they have their attorney in North Jersey, but I think a lot of them don't realize that it's the title company that's actually handling the escrows and the monies.
Right.
And, they are up on top of the actual premiums and insurance. They want to check rates, but I think a lot of them really don't realize that it's the title company handling that money.
Right. And just let's work back. I know you guys wanted to ask this question, but I'll ask it. What is title?
So I always used to say, going back years, to make it easy, and this was explained to me back when I started, you think of all the other insurances, whether it's auto insurance, health insurance, life insurance, all those insurances protect you for things that are going to happen in the future. Where title insurance is very strange. You're actually being protected for things that may have happened in the past. And what I mean is it could be taxes, liens, judgments, maybe somebody put an addition on a new kitchen. You sell the house, the new buyer comes in, you don't have title insurance. Well, there may be some open items, like I just mentioned, that weren't taken care of. So it's mistakes, which is really crazy, right? It's mistakes that were made previously that weren't caught, or maybe somebody was on a deed that never signed off, and now they come back into the picture. So unlike all the other insurances, it protects you for any of those problems that have happened in the past. And it's all regulated, which is great. So it really comes down to the fees. So title insurance premiums are all the same in New Jersey, which makes it easier for the consumer. So it's really the fees you want to, you really keep an eye on, whether it's the transaction fees, the processing fees. So those are the only things that differ with the regulations. But the premium itself, they're all the same, which makes it a lot easier for people like, me when they're out there making contacts.
I mean, it's great to have, because you how could you possibly know, right, what happened before with that property? How could you, so you guys are professionals looking back into these records, all the right places to search, you have your whole team, handling all that. And it takes a load off of the attorney, right?
It does. I mean, to be honest, I wish the attorneys still handled this part of it, the processing part, because it's more for a title company to mess up on, especially with the fraud that's been so evident now with handling escrow and wires, because we've heard all the stories where, they break through on emails and they try to get the consumer to send a wire, and it goes to the wrong place, and now somebody's out of, a large sum of money. So, things definitely.
I think you had something like that happen recently, right?
It did happen in one of my transactions. So, like you said, they kind of, they make an email address look like it's coming from you. Maybe an I is an L or whatever, you know what I mean? And I call one of my clients, and I always tell them, in the beginning, if you get any emails and it doesn't look like it's from us or whatever, just let me know, right? Just confirm it with us before you do anything. And we don't ever ask to wire any money.
Right.
And so we're asking for her deposit, and days are going by, and we're kind of like, what's going on? She's like, well, I sent it to wherever I got the email from. It was like $40,000 in Florida. Oh. And I think what people don't realize, so it ended up, she did get it back, believe it or not.
Great.
Somehow they were able to stop it. But she also did have funds to still move forward with the purchase if, God forbid, that was tied up for a little bit. And there are a lot of people that don't.
Yep.
Right.
So it could be a really, really big deal.
It's become common, unfortunately.
Yep.
One of the things I like at Elite, they have something called certified. So if somebody on our end were to do the wire, they're going to cover it. So,
awesome.
So at least on our end. But you see them come in a lot of times on the consumer email, which is a Gmail or Yahoo account. They see the thread. They then paste the title company or the attorney's information, and it looks good.
Yeah.
And then they reach out to that consumer just because they got all that information on the thread. So a lot of times everybody thinks it comes from the title company or from maybe the real estate company, but it's really coming from the consumer. They get in on that buyer or seller's Gmail or Yahoo account,
right,
or Hotmail, whatever it might be, and it's a little easier to get in that way.
I'll go back. Hotmail's never been hacked, by the way.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Edit that part.
Isn't that crazy? No, I'm just messing around.
Okay.
He's still using AOL.
That's why I still use it.
He's still using Hotmail.
How about the people that still have AOL? I see AOL. I'm like,
AOL's been hacked at least
What's
twice.
that?
But
right.
those,
what is that?
But that is a lasting email account. I mean, AOL, who still?
But you know what?
Every once in a
for
while.
some
Yes,
reason,
yes.
our e-signing services don't work with AOL.
Okay.
Yeah, the platform, it is built differently, AOL. So it's but it's funny whenever I say, like, are you really? And then if I see it's a millennial, then really like messes with my head. Like, how do you even know about this?
That's right.
Like those AIM days where you were on those little
Yeah.
chat.
You can't help but hear the buffering sound in the
Right.
background. We're loading. That's right. Right.
And then
The
your
modem
mom, and then
picking
your
up.
mom picked up the phone. midway.
Oh wow.
Oh boy, you're really dating yourself. So you're not 20.
All right, 21.
She's 21.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it's so funny when we sit down with a client, and I'll talk maybe buyers specifically, right? So we kind of go over closing costs and what's involved, and kind of a start to finish through the whole process through a consultation, right? And we talk about title, and for some reason, strangely enough, in real estate transactions where people are spending, this is probably their largest purchase, they usually want to spend the least amount on protecting themselves. Title, attorneys, inspections, all this stuff. And interestingly enough, in my experience, the higher the purchase price, the less they want to spend on the protective stuff. And I get, I start talking about title, and to me, it's probably the most important part of the entire transaction, right? And I think on the lending side, they say cover your asset or protect your asset, right? And so
I thought you were going to stop.
come on now. And so it's of course it's for the buyer or borrower, but also for the lending institution and things like that. And I often get people that say, no, thank you, we don't need that, and it's not optional, right? So can you just talk a little bit about, and even how important it is when you go to sell your home in the future, right? Because it's just equally as important. You're buying right now and you're not thinking about selling when you don't even own the house yet.
Right.
But it's equally as important when you go to sell, and maybe some judgments from prior owners come up, and you just have your little insurance policy and you're good to go. So
Right.
if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And
Sure. So, when that search is ordered originally, whether you're the buyer buying that property before you end up selling, it's the searchers in the county that are doing that search. So they want to find every tax lien judgment, and they're going back 60 years on a purchase. That's a full search. So when they go back 60 years, a lot of things could have happened. Things have changed. The technology's changed. A lot of things are now becoming on computer, but a lot of stuff is still indexed in some counties where it's still on paper. So mistakes could have been made. But to your question, when somebody were to sell a couple years down the line, if they don't have clear title, or once again something pops up, that now prohibits them from selling on clean title. A lot of times you're worried about years ago, when really it could have just been a few years ago, a couple years, where there were problems that may have arisen that nobody knows about. So that will stop that attorney from moving forward with open liens or judgments. And just to clarify, a lien is a mortgage. So anybody that says is a lien on the property is an open mortgage. A judgment is against the person itself. So it could be a personal judgment against them that maybe didn't show a few years ago and maybe was added on years later. So definitely want to have clean title. So if you have mortgage, the lender will always make you get title insurance.
Sure.
If it's a cash deal, you don't have to. You're not required in the state of New Jersey to get title insurance. But like I used to say, the biggest investment of your life is your home.
of course.
If you're spending that much money, spend the extra few $1,000s on the title insurance and have peace of mind.
Right.
Absolutely.
It is okay. It is good that you mentioned that, because it always comes up on my transactions. Like, my buyers will say, "Okay, so I'm buying FHA, I'm paying PMI, so I don't have to pay for title insurance. Can you clarify on that? It's not the same, right? And the importance of the title again, right?"
So on the FHA, on the FHA, they are.
So the PMI, though, is protecting on the default part.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not-
Totally
it's not
separate
protecting the buyer.
from title insurance. But people get this so mixed up on different insurances, right? Even when we talk about life insurance, people get, a lot of companies are doing their marketing where they're calling it mortgage insurance, right? And then people are getting mixed up with
that.
mortgage insurance that the lender is requiring versus it's really life insurance that an insurance company is trying to say maybe mortgage protection if something like that. So I think that's maybe what you're
Yes,
talking
mortgage
about,
insurance.
right?
Yeah, I was referring to that, and as you went into it. Now, so I just wanted to. We spoke about it on a different episode, right? 2 episodes ago, and I just wanted to bring that up again because it always comes back. It's just like I already pay PMI, which is mortgage insurance, so I'm already protected. I don't need to pay for title insurance, so it's not the same. The PMI is protecting the insurer.
The bank.
The
Yeah.
bank,
bank,
right? And the title is protecting you, the consumer, right?
Right.
And that's a great point, Santos, because even when you refinance, that's the question you hear a lot. And a lot of times the realtor's not involved at the refinance point. You know, they're going through the lender primarily. But why do I need title insurance when I already have it? Well, the numbers change. When you're refinancing, you're taking cash out, you're getting a home equity line of credit. So those numbers change with the bank. So because the numbers change, you have to get title insurance again. But like everybody should understand, it's a refinance rate. So it's considerably less.
Right.
But since the numbers change, they will require you to get the refinanced rate of title insurance. But other than that, it's a one-time fee, over the course of, you owning the home or the property.
Sure. Now, I have to pick your brain on something that's a little bit more complex. So I recently heard that you might be able to get title insurance when you're buying a property at sheriff's sale. Am I getting that right? I might have it confused a little bit.
So when there's a property bought at sheriff's sale, to get it ahead of time, the insurance?
Maybe.
You're on. No, you know what you might mean to Dawn? I think, and I've had this happen, when somebody's looking at a sheriff's sale, they want to run this search.
Of course.
Not the insurance right off the bat. So if you know when that sheriff's sale is coming about, what I've told a lot of people is when you have that date set, let me know. As close as we can get to that date, let's run a search, a full search on the property. So at that point, we're going to find everything up to that point that maybe have been judgments, liens, open items.
Right.
So that's probably what you may be referring
And
to.
then once you have the sheriff's deed, have you seen anything maybe post-possession, like once they have possession of the property, are they getting anything on the title insurance end?
Yeah, recently I had one from a sheriff's sale where the lender came out of nowhere and said, hey, there's a mortgage on this property, and it was never found. So back when, it was the job of the attorneys at some point before everything transitioned to the title companies to record the mortgages.
Right.
Well, not everybody's done it. Not everybody does a great job. There have been mortgages that weren't sent into the county, were misfiled and not taken care of. So in that instance, something did pop up. Now he got out of it because it wasn't his, and title insurance did play a part in it previously because the actual title company previously did their job. It didn't show years ago.
Right.
But the fact that it was brought to the attention from the lender years later, it brought up an issue and it had to get figured out between the attorneys. But a little mistake like that just not being taken care of. So you're trusting other people that they did their job, so you're not on the hook. That's basically, to your point with the sheriff's sale, very similar to any other transaction.
Sure.
But get that search done ahead of time. Make sure it's clear, as close as you can get to that sheriff's sale, and then if everything looks clear, you should be fine. Once you purchase the property from the sheriff's sale, use that same search. There's no need to pay for another search, and we do something what's called a continuation. A continuation can go within 60 days. So within 60 days of that original search when it was done, we'll insure it up to 60 days later with just an update going from that 60-day period to the current day. And
Make
that's
sure
called a
nothing was
continuation.
recorded.
Yeah, because
It could be cloudy. But you could end
Absolutely.
up with a cloudy title.
Yeah, as all you know, even a day of a closing, we do something called a rundown. A rundown is done basically within 24 hours or 48 hours before the day of the closing, just to make sure nothing popped up. Because the title insurance commitment might have been sent out to the attorney a month ago. Now we're closing. Well, that's a month. I mean, chances are things may have not happened, but you want to make sure. So a rundown is always needed. And we've had instances where attorneys, or my previous companies, the attorney would complain and say, Chris, the closing happened at 3 o'clock. I needed the rundown this morning. It just showed up now. I'm like,
Oh, my goodness.
how does it look? Is everything all right? Because, it's after the fact. Now, if anything did pop up, I would think the title insurance now takes accountability for that. It was their mistake.
Yeah, you would think.
So in a timely fashion, you need the people behind the scenes to make sure they get that to the attorney and to the lender ahead of time.
And it's funny, you've always been very responsive, which is why we've, 20 years later, we're still using you.
I appreciate that.
You've always been that great of a help, that great of a, resource in title. And anytime we've asked you, could you do a search on it? You're always there. You're always
Especially
there.
in our short sale days.
It helps
when
to
we were
have-
doing a lot of
Yes.
short
Yeah.
sales, we had to do it. And funny enough, we had one last year that we did. And you're talking about, if something pops up and the title was done and, in short sales, they're not so short, as you probably know. And I think like 45, 60 days had passed. And when title was rerun again by a different company, a new buyer, there was a federal tax lien recorded. And so that wasn't really so fun.
Ouch.
So you never know, right? I mean, that doesn't happen that frequently. And it was, it took them many years to file it. It didn't close in time for that.
And
not
that's
to
a
pop
great
up.
point, Dawn, because there's something that's run called upper court search, chancery search, where they're going to run the federal judgments, federal tax liens. So that becomes even bigger than the county. Now sometimes you want to run those federal judgments because a lot of those don't, they don't show up on the county. So just to your point, that's an issue. And we haven't even spoken about surveys, right?
Right.
Surveys, a property line.
Yeah.
So your title's free and clear, but maybe that surveyor didn't do the right job. The neighbor next door sold their house. The new homeowner moves in. Hey, why's your fence?
Right.
You're on my property.
Right, or a shed or
You've lived there for
something.
20 years, no problem. But
Yeah.
the new homeowner
Right.
has an accurate survey that was done where the previous owner really didn't pay attention. And
Right.
wait, no, you're on my survey line.
Yeah.
You're on my line.
And that
So now
happens
who made the
way more
mistake?
often than you think.
Oh, yes.
Especially in New Jersey, right? Because
Yes.
everybody's very
Yeah,
close in
on top of
proximity in
each
a lot
other.
of
Yep.
places.
Yeah.
So when the survey comes up, right, it's not required, which is probably the problem because people don't want to spend the money.
Yes.
An extra $1,000 or
$1,000,
$900 or whatever it is. And I can almost guarantee, I'd probably bet my life on it. Every time I have a client that declines the survey, they call me about 2 weeks after closing for a copy of their survey.
Right.
Really?
They're
Yeah.
going to get a
Saying
fence
without
done.
fail.
They're going to get
Yes.
some work done. Just send it over to me. I'm like, well, remember, you signed off that you were
Yes.
declining the survey.
Yeah.
So, but I had a client who got a survey and everything's fine. 2 years later, they get a certified letter from the town that, on such and such date, they're going to be removing their rear fence, and they had like a she shed, like a, pretty elaborate she shed.
Right.
Because they said that there is like a utility easement between the two rear yards and that my client's property was on the easement. So my client calls me, he's like, I didn't buy a property with an easement. Like, I remember that, right? And so we look back and he has his survey. And thank goodness he had his survey because the town was actually wrong. But if he did not have that survey, you remember a time in the pandemic, things were so wild. There's no way you were getting a survey done privately
No. Took time.
in a quick turnaround time.
Right.
And so if he didn't have that survey, his fence would have been removed, his shed would have been gone, and probably not replaced.
Right.
Interesting, and another great point, Dawn. A lot of people, if they feel like the property line is tight or there's an issue, they can do what's called an easement search. Basically, just call their attorney or me or you and just say, listen, I want to run an easement search. I want to go back a certain amount of years, and we want to just see if there's any easements on that property. Because a lot of times that may not be found if you do an easement search. You want to get that out of the way early and not have to deal with it. That might kill the transaction, right? So an easement search, to your point,
Sure.
could be important to do ahead of time.
Of
But if the
course.
surveys, and just so you know, if the seller is willing to sign an affidavit of no change, and you know this already, but for the people out there, an affidavit of no change, the seller's signing off saying there's been no changes to the property, and they've basically, given their word and they're, responsible to you for the new buyer to use that old survey
Right.
within 10 years. So that's another good thing. If they do want to save on a survey and the seller can sign off on that, no changes to the property, and if the survey is within 10 years, most title companies will accept that.
And is it generally, if that's the case, if it's within 10 years, is there a reduced fee because they can, continue using that trust that document
Reduced fee on the
on the title, or is that
they'll call it a survey endorsement.
okay?
So that might be like it's minimal $25, $50
Okay,
for
yeah.
the endorsement of the survey, but
Okay.
that's it. But it'll save, if the customer is looking to save a little money and they can get a hold of that survey
Yeah.
within 10 years, we'll accept that. And if that old survey And the reason it's between 10 years, they'll go back to their old survey company if they made the mistake. They'll they did it 10 years ago, should still be good.
Yeah.
So they're on the hook, so to speak, if anything were to happen.
Right.
But once again, if somebody changes the property, fences, pools, we suggest, you really get a new survey. Because you're going to have to get one anyway at some point.
And get them with the stakes, people. Don't be cheap.
The corner markers. Corner markers, could usually run about $150 or $200 for
Each,
corner
yeah.
markers.
Listen, it's worth it.
I always recommend my clients to get the survey. And the ones that are like, no, I don't want it, those are the ones that like
run into trouble
they're
later.
like, hey, can I get the copy
It's
of
just the way that I'm not superstitious, but there's some things where I'm like, if you're not insured, you're going to have an issue. If you don't do everything that to protect yourself, get a survey, get this, something is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's peace of mind. And in the big scheme of things, when you're buying a property, it's really minimal compared to everything else you're dealing
minimal.
with.
And to have that stake there where there's no disputing, right? It wasn't done by you. Wasn't done by your neighbor. Wasn't done by the previous owner. There's a stake here that an independent party figured out. These are my corners. Get it done, because one day your neighbor's going to want a driveway and they're going to run it, put it over your line, or they want to put it right on top of it. And you want to know, where did they take up extra room? Did they mess up my plans for the future?
Yep.
You never know.
Yeah.
Get it
Who's
done.
to say, pool, deck, anything to the property. It's one less thing for you have to worry about down the road with the town and everything. And obviously when you sell, it's a good selling point too to have a survey already done.
Yes, I agree.
Of course. So how long does it take when someone orders title, not on a rush? How long does it usually take turnaround time?
Right now, probably every county's different. And just so everybody understands, a lot of people think the title insurance company actually does the search. The searchers themselves are independent in the county, so they're basically working for everybody. Now, the title companies that are busy, they tend to sometimes do their work first because they know they're going to get paid and they have a nice workload coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
So in most cases right now, you're probably on a 2 to 3 day turnaround. Well, let's say non-rush. I would say 3 day turnaround on a non-rush because things aren't overly busy.
Okay. Yep.
But it's
Depends on the county.
depends on the county. But I would say 3 business days.
Passaic County runs about the same. Bergen County.
Yeah, about the same right now.
Yeah.
So once again, the title company orders the title work. The searcher in the county will run that search. That then comes back to the title company. Now, the title examiner, not so much the attorney. Attorney will look at the bullets or the alerts on there, but the examiner for the title company will look over the title itself and examine it and point out any open liens, judgments, any taxes. That report commitment gets put together and then sent to the attorney. The attorney will glance over it and look at it, but they're not examining it like the title examiner. That's their job. They'll highlight any problems and then bring that to the attention of the homeowner, whether it's the buyer or the seller. At that point, now once again, like we said before, the attorneys used to handle everything. Now it gets handled to basically the extension of the attorney's office, the settlement processor, which works for the title company. They've now taken it upon themselves as the title company to now work with the banks, the lender, the buyer, and the seller. So they're putting all the numbers and the figures together, and will cut the checks for paying off the loan, cutting the check to the seller, and issuing the deed to the county on behalf of the buyer. So that's what the title company is doing. It used to be all about the insurance. And people lose focus, I think. They still think that, the normal consumer, they don't realize so much more goes into it. So really know who you're working with. It's not all about the actual search. It's about who's going to fund it, who's going to handle the money, who's going to do the payoff, who's putting the deed into the county with my name on it.
Right.
So just as important to ask those questions besides, how much am I paying for, title insurance, those extra things that I think, a show like this is great because it educates people to say, you know what, I have to, when I buy that home, figure out who's handling my file and who's going to be working on it. Because you want to call the title company and speak to the processor.
Sure.
That's fine too.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
I did have a question about scope, right, or range. Elite, we know, obviously we've been using you for years. We know that you work in this area, but we have agents from Mahwah, Bergen County, all the way north down to Ocean County. We have people who live in Point Pleasant. We have people like all over agents, and they do business, in the whole state. How far do you work, or does it matter what county you are in? You'll help.
Yeah, most title companies in New Jersey do the entire state.
Okay.
Now, as you get past, I want to say, Long Beach Island, things sort of change where the attorneys are kind of phased out, and it's mostly the title companies and the realtor handling
Right, right.
I don't say transaction, but they're handling the duties that maybe the attorney would have been involved with. But most title companies in New Jersey, they're going to handle the whole state. That's not an issue.
Okay.
But it's really when you get out of state, now people are transient a little bit more and buying properties. So elite is Florida, Pennsylvania, and New York.
Okay.
And, that's a big part of it because you see a lot of people with their second home in Florida.
Sure.
So it's good to have a title company that can handle not only your Jersey, but when it's time, if you do want to, move along or buy something else, we can do that too. But we found that Pennsylvania, New York, and Florida are kind of the, nice hot spot. North Carolina is one that I think I'm going to push for. It seems like a lot of people.
A lot of people, yeah.
with North
But as
Carolina.
far as the state, I know we have a mutual friend who's an attorney who has, works up here and down in Point Pleasant. So, we're always happy to refer him, and I know he uses you guys for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that person is great. I know you might have him on at some point, but what's nice about this particular attorney, he has that office down in South Jersey. So when he's down there doing closings or up here, it's nice, easy transition because once again, you have people with their second home down the shore area, and he's able to be there as well. So he's got both ends covered.
We've
which
been
is
down
great.
to his place
Yeah.
down there. He has a place down there. It's great.
Oh, yeah,
right on the
been
water.
there too. Absolutely.
So, I know I asked you what the turnaround time is, but how crazy was it during the pandemic, where they were having, searchers allowed in once a week or whatever it was? Kind of reminded me of when you could get, now I'm not from this era. I'm just telling you, I heard about it, where you could get gas on like the odd and even days.
I
And
remember as a kid.
Yeah.
We're dating ourselves.
So-
Right, Marcos?
not me though. I don't have
No,
nothing to do
of
with it.
course not.
I don't think you're 30 yet.
Well, he's 30 for sure. That's actually. Are you 31 now?
31 now.
Okay.
Look at that.
I was like 26.
But how was it like going through? Because especially probably the first year, everything was just upside down, right? So can you tell us,
was.
like, how long? Do you remember how long maybe was the longest that it took you guys to get title on something during that time?
Every week was different with the counties. Some counties would have people in a few days, some wouldn't. It was like a mishmash. But I tell you, I felt so important, unlike any point in my career, because the only people on the highway were first responders, police, mortgage people, realtors, and title.
That's it.
Nobody else was allowed on the highway.
Right.
You'd see a car pull next to you. Oh, he
Yeah.
must be either title or mortgage.
Right.
But
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was definitely dicey because you didn't know. I mean, you're dealing with the pandemic, which was serious, but you didn't know when title was coming back. People, as you witnessed, were doing closings out of their cars, picnic benches, porches.
Yeah.
So something we'll all never forget. But it was a busy time because of the refis, and that added even more of a burden on the searchers. Was the refis were so, as
Through the
we all
roof.
know,
Yeah.
it was fantastic,
Yeah.
the rates, but it definitely put a lot of strain on title work, and obviously we didn't know who was coming in the office, who wasn't.
Right.
So you weren't having a 2 to 3 day turnaround time.
So to your question, I would say back then with the searchers and with the office, it was probably like a week. Maybe 10 days.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not that bad.
Because once again, you didn't know what the schedule was. The lockdown and people weren't coming in.
Yeah.
Remember, some counties you could search online, so they were working remote as well, the searchers. But then other counties you had to go in, and then you were waiting on them. So yeah, I would say a week. But it was the refis were really the busy part.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any crazy stories? Like maybe, something that happened in title that was missed or anything wild like that you can share with us?
So the one thing I remember, now going back years ago, but this still gets brought up. It was even in the title class years ago, and I've heard it brought up before. In Bogota, there was a piece of property where an easement, so to speak, right? An easement where somebody was being adverse possession, right? They were taking care of the property for a certain amount of time,
Right.
And the gentleman or the homeowner was mowing the lawn for 20 years.
Yeah. That's exactly the time. Yeah.
And it was indicated in the textbook at that time that homeowner was able to obtain possession of the property
Right.
From the town because they took care of it for so many years.
Yep.
And somebody tried to sell it. I guess it was the town or somebody else. However, it developed, and the court said no. this homeowner has been maintaining
Right.
it for X amount of years. It's
Wow.
theirs. And they
Yeah,
were
20.
getting that property.
Anytime it reaches 20
Is that
and you've
right?
been
I thought it was
handling,
20.
you can just fence it off and it's yours.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's a crazy situation. I mean, there's been attorneys situations where things have happened with. It's almost like back when we said that they were handling the files with processing and the funds, and so it was almost like a revolving credit card. There are times years ago where attorneys would have problems making ends meet, and I heard stories where attorneys would take that money and maybe pay off the other mortgage and then
Wow.
wait for the next one and then do almost like
Yeah.
a revolving credit
Oh, my
card.
goodness.
And then the
Ooh.
Department of Insurance and Banking comes in and these things get out of control. But,
Yeah.
stories like that have happened. But I would say more or less you hear title companies now that have run into situations. And I know 2 of maybe 10 years ago that were closed down just for that. And to the credit of the owner of the title company wanted to pay his employees, but was using that escrow money
Oh, boy.
to fund the title company.
Yeah.
And then when business came in, would now,
Wow.
put
No.
it back in and then touch it. So that kind of stuff I've heard.
Yeah, no
But,
commingling allowed.
Yeah,
no
right.
commingling.
So in the title work, but yeah,
Wow.
holidays are always an issue in the title world because of people's faith and when they could close and when they
Right.
cannot. Power of attorney. Well, my husband's going to be in Italy on Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, we have it scheduled, or Friday.
right.
He's going to be in Italy. Well, can we get a power of attorney? All right, so now you got to get in touch with the U.S. Embassy.
The embassy, yeah.
and get a power of attorney there. I mean, stuff
Oh
last
my
minute.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stuff last minute. But one of the funny stories, and when we talk about refis when it's booming, I'm not going to mention the lender and embarrass them. But when I
Wachovia.
nobody's paying for the show. We're not going to mention anybody, right? Oh, man. So this one particular lender, they would say, "Oh, we're going to close in 30 days or 45." Well, man, it's like 90 days. People are still waiting to close on a refinance.
Wow.
So when I would see this one particular lender, I would say, "This isn't going to go easy," because this file was put in 3 months ago. So what would happen is the same story. My closer would show up, the notary. I get the phone call. Here I'm at the closing. They said they didn't have to bring any money to closing. And they have to, and what does the HUD say? Or this, at that point, it was the HUD. They say you have to bring $3,000 to closing. And it was this one particular lender. And it was because it was so strung out that the taxes, remember, I think within
yeah.
30 days,
Sure.
the taxes have to be included. But this one particular lender, they wanted purchases. They didn't care about the refinance. So these people were pushed out. But they were never told or never informed with the communication that now they have to, prepare for taxes because they're within the 30-day period. And I always used to say there should have been a T-shirt made that said, "I was told I don't have to bring any money to closing," because that was the same every refinance. I said, and at some point I have to say to the loan officer, "Did you tell them like they're gonna have to bring money to closing because this was 60, 90 days ago you put this file in, and now we're getting to the third quarter taxes and it's showing. So please make sure that they know they have to bring the funds for taxes, property taxes." So that would always be. Kind of, I would say funny, but it was
That's not a fun phone call.
no,
to make.
not a phone call. But it was kind of always interesting when that lender would have those refis.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think it's so important to obviously work with a reputable title insurance company, but also a title agent that you trust, right? We see some slip-ups happen. I can give you an example. I know a realtor who sold a house. He sold his own house, and the buyer's title company actually sent him a check for the entire net proceeds without paying his mortgage off. And it was a pretty heavy mortgage. And I can see where something could go wrong because, he's in the industry. He knew that, he had to let the title company know, but somebody else may have,
That's a nice surprise.
Just take off.
I remember that.
You know who it is,
Yeah,
right?
I
it's
know
like
who that is.
$600,000 all of a sudden
So-
lands in your bank account.
so-
And you're like, what?
That could be. I mean, I'm sure that there's got to be something in there where there's like a period of any errors or something like that it gets corrected. But
You would think, but mistakes do happen where checks are cut, especially during a busy, time when the funding department at the title company is doing closings. They're cutting checks. They're doing things on a faster pace than normal. They're not dotting their I's, crossing their T's as much as maybe they've done in the past because they're getting pressure to close on other files. They got to push other ones out, fund
Right,
them,
right.
and checks get cut and mistakes are made. And we see that a lot sometimes with water and sewer. There's and we
Yep.
like to.
Yeah.
And I like the overpayment and get the refund. Oh, even if you can't get the exact number, raise it a little bit, and it better to be a little higher.
Yes.
And by law, the title company has to cut you a check back for the difference.
For the difference.
So we see that a lot with water and sewer, especially right at the end, right before closing. So if they can't get that number, because sometimes calling the municipal, you can't get somebody on the phone, or they can't give you an exact number, have an idea and maybe go a little bit higher and let the homeowner know, listen, it could be a little bit less, but we want to just make sure, and then we'll cut you a check back. Rather be...
Right, just an escrow, and once you get the final billing.
Because if you come in too low, and now they're hounding the new homeowner, right? You're short. You still owe this. They get a letter at the mail. I bought the house. This isn't mine. It's the previous owner. So now it becomes an issue, and rather eliminate that. And always better to go a little higher, and cut the check back if you have to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're just coming to the end of the episode, but I wanted to make sure two things, or a few things, but these two things. First, where can people reach you?
People can reach me. You want cell phone number?
Yeah, you can say anything. Yeah.
Wow, this is fantastic.
Are you on social media?
I'm on Twitter.
All right.
What
What's your handle?
You don't really want to know that.
Okay.
It's a Giants thing. I'm involved with it.
Go for it.
This whatever credibility I was able to obtain from this interview will now go out the window.
Okay.
Giants Carb Crush on Twitter.
Okay.
It's a Giants podcast and all this stuff. But
tell us about your podcast. So that was my other question. What we all want to know, because we're going to put it on our screen on our podcast. Your information. So what's your phone number that we can reach you?
Anybody can reach me, 973-886-7712. It's Chris Rosa at Elite Title Group. Once again, anybody out there, if you need liens, judgments, taxes pulled ahead of time from the county, we have a great relationship. We can help you out with that, and
excellent.
Pretty much do it for minimally, whatever we can do with that to help you out. So,
and also important, what's your podcast?
All right. So big Giants fan. So NY Giants Rush is the show. It's on every Monday nights on YouTube, NY Giants Rush.
Awesome.
And we interview Giant players. This week we had on Justin Pugh, in fact, who was with the Giants.
Nice.
He was on the show. And we've had countless Giant players and some coaches. So it's a great show. So check it out.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
No, listen, we've been happy to have you. We've been wanting to ask you all these questions in front of a camera, so that the rest of the listening audience and watching audiences, as it were, gets to find out all these answers. They hear it from us. That's one thing, but when they hear it from the actual title person, it does, give a level of credibility, right? Because they want to hear from the source.
Right.
They kind of believe us, but they definitely believe you.
Well, Marcos, title insurance is so exciting. Everybody just was salivating for it.
Were you dreaming of this when you grew up?
I had a hard time getting into the building.
Yeah, I'm sure this is what you grew up wanting to be, right? Title rep.
I was telling you a story earlier. Yeah. When you start out and you're meeting realtors like yourselves and brokers, you have to break the ice a little bit. Title insurance, what do I talk about? To break the ice, I used to get up there and say, when I was a kid, you want to be a ball player, fireman, police officer,
Cowboys and Indians.
Pilot, something. I don't think any 8-year-old ever sat there and said, when I grow up, I want to sell title insurance.
Right.
But like I always say, that's the path I've chosen, and like all of us, it's done great.
Yeah.
And we're able to help people. So it may not be the exciting all the time, but you know what? You get validated when you see people close on their home and they've been happy with the service. So it's a service business. And being a homeowner myself, I've been through it, and I appreciate the work that everything goes into it. It's channels. It gets handed off, right? For the title company, the attorney, the searcher, the surveyor, the lender, the realtor, the brokers.
Yeah.
So it's so many hands are in the pot. When you think about it, it really is amazing how it gets to the closing table.
Right.
Because so many people have input.
And every part of that it's integral to the process, right? It's crucial to how you go from a home buyer or looker or searcher or to an actual owner, and all these people had a hand in it. It's amazing to me.
Now, Marcos, I'm not going to ask Dawn and Santos because they're younger.
Okay.
But imagine back in 1997, because I think you were the same age.
Yeah, I think so. I might be older. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, we'll say same age. I think we're the same.
Okay.
But remember with the beepers and fax machines?
Oh, forget it.
How did we get this done?
Yeah, it was...
Payphones.
I have to say,
although in 97,
what are those?
I'm going to tell you something. In 1997, I worked for Goldman Sachs back in the 90s, and I remember having a SkyTel beeper. You could actually type into it. Wow. It had a green screen. It was just the
Sounds
wildest
fancy.
thing.
You were showing off,
But,
I'm sure,
but
at the
that
dinner meetings.
that was a pretty cool thing because I could get messages through it. Like
That's how you got all your business. You had to show everybody saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to work with Marcos.
Right.
Look at this guy. What is that?
That was it was a fun time.
But right, pulling up to the payphones, making a call, somebody beeped you. I have to get in touch with, and being a realtor.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
back then.
let me tell you. Well, I had realtors back then, but none of them were walking around with beepers or cell phones. But I did have a cell phone back then in the 90s, and I remember my very first month. And this is a 3-letter company out there that does mobile communication. You'll figure out which one that is. But it was a $900 bill for the first month of my cell phone.
Because you
Imagine
weren't
that,
calling your friends
900
after 9 p.m.
No,
That's what
it was 6-second billing, what they called 6-second billing. It wasn't like per minute. It was per 6 seconds that they were billing of you being on the phone. So imagine that your first phone bill, it's $900 for the month. But it was also a different.
That was
different
probably
time.
more than people's rent at the time.
Yeah, it was insane.
That's crazy.
It was insane.
Wow.
So last thing, talking about funny moment, when
Yeah.
I started with Title, I was handed a beeper. Felt like a big shot. Beeper,
Yeah,
oh,
of
this is
course,
great.
of course.
And then like 6 months later, everybody started getting the phones a little bit more, and then I was issued a phone, flip phone, and that was
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah.
And that
Did
wasn't
you have
even,
to hold it with 2 hands?
Yeah, no, it wasn't that big. It
The
wasn't that
Motorola,
big.
you pulled the little antenna
pull it out
out.
of there. It looked like a phone that should have been in like a toy store with
Right.
plastic around
Right.
it.
Did you have a car phone? I just have to ask.
No.
You
I?
had a car
No.
phone.
Yeah, I did.
No.
Yeah, I did.
I wasn't that successful yet like Marcos. I had a beeper, and if you were lucky, you pulled up to a convenience store and you didn't have to get out of the car when it was 10 degrees.
Yeah.
And you grabbed the phone and
Yeah.
was able to, everybody knows our age, yank it into the
Yeah.
into the car and not freeze. And oh my God, I can pull up to the phone.
Yeah, back then it was funny. I remember like it was yesterday. I had a BMW, navy blue BMW. It was amazing, and it had a phone in the console in the between the seats.
From BMW?
Yeah, from BMW.
Really?
And then after that, I had another BMW, a 7 Series, huge, and that had a phone in it also. And that was custom. That particular. Well, actually, why am I getting into this? Forget about that.
I just had to ask.
That was
I
an
wanted to see
amazing.
how old you guys really are.
Yeah, well, that was an amazing car. I love that car. But it was a different life, right? Everybody's gone through different stages. Santos was a different guy altogether. Santos, I'll just say it on the podcast. We've said it before. Santos lost 155 pounds.
He's half the man he used to be.
Literally, yeah.
A whole different person now.
Yeah.
That's my brother.
Took him 11 months.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, he
That's a
basically
lot,
got to the country
155.
and didn't know any English. And in 11 months, he decided to teach himself English and lose 155 pounds in the process.
Oh, my goodness.
He's working out like a beast. This man can run forever. Yeah. He's the Spanish David Goggins, kind of
Oh, yeah, the Goggins, tough guy.
the same mentality.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah.
That's it's all about dedication. That's
Yeah,
great.
no kidding.
Inspiring.
But Chris, thank you so much
thank
for,
you.
for coming to the show.
We
and
enjoyed having you here.
Yeah.
Enjoyed being here.
Thank you for
it was
being
good.
here.
Thank you.
Good?
Yeah, we're
Alrighty,
out.
you got the podcast, you got the information, and this is Realtors Radio Network signing off.
Keep an ear out for the next episode of the Realtors Radio Network, where Santos Garcia, Marcos Suarez, and Dawn McCullough share their wealth of real estate knowledge. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and share. Find us on social media at Realtors Radio Network. See you next time on the Realtors Radio Network.